Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. I first just want to start by thanking everyone for spending just a little bit of their time with us tonight, and happy Black History Month. We are thrilled to be here with you tonight, sharing our latest report in our Nielsen Diverse Intelligence series, The Global Black Audience, Shaping the Future of Media. And so it is my privilege to help lead this work and this research, put it all together in this report. If you haven't taken a look at it, you'll see the QR code in your seat on the screens. Please go and download that and share it with your networks. We're going to go through a few of the highlights from the report findings, and then we're going to get into a really great, fun expert panel to kind of bring these insights to life. So I will start with the next slide, please, to take us into a topic, again, that we're really passionate and proud about in a time when diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies may be pulling back. Nielsen's research really underscores that the Black audience and consumer demand for more inclusive content and brand messaging is higher than ever. As a team, it was important for us to explore what that looks like in the Black community, both in the US and in key markets across the diaspora. In the report, you'll see perspectives from Black audiences in Brazil, the UK, the US, Nigeria, and South Africa. But keep in mind that Nielsen's latest research is not just to inform your DEI strategy. These insights are to inform your growth strategy. And so that's because we're growing in both size, in power, and in complexity. In the next few decades, the US Black population is projected to go from about 15% today to 18% in 2060. And that is important because Black immigrants will account for 1/3 of this projected population growth. Africa is a key driver in that, and that's important for our industry to consider because 7 out of 10 Africans today are under the age of 30. That makes the continent home to the youngest population on Earth. So with that global influx, if your brand is trying to chase that projected $2 trillion that you see on the screen, there are some considerations that you might want in your strategy. For example, there's distinct African-American cultural nuances and experiences that have still gone untold. There's already 1 in 5 Black Americans today that are immigrants or the child of an immigrant. And the African-born US population has already grown 3 times in the past 20 years, putting them on par with our strong Caribbean population here in the US. When you sum up all of these segments and experiences, it takes a lot of media to meet the demands of a community where content is key to the culture. Next slide. And that shows up in our measurement as more than 81 hours a week from Black audiences spending with media. And in fact, Black America is America's key audience. Thank you, your check's in the mail. So this 81 hours includes more than 9.5 hours with radio, a combined 21 hours with smartphones and tablets, and 73% of Black viewers who spread their time across 3 or more streaming services. In fact, 55% of our total media time is with the television alone, and Black America provides us with a great example of the convergent TV phenomenon, blending streaming and linear TV in the chase for just great video content. We are using this opportunity, and this audience has more time with connected TV than any other population at 17.5 hours, and is more likely to maintain access to broadcast channels, digital cable packages, so that in addition to their streaming services, so they have the best of both worlds and all that TV has to offer. Not only are we engaging with television, our data also shows Black audiences are embracing the abundance of content choice, where other audiences told us that they're overwhelmed by it. Next slide, please. So what's driving this bar-setting engagement with media? Well, along with our population and our buying power, the demand for representation is growing too. And not just the stereotypes or the tokens, but Black audiences are searching for inclusive content that matches our complexity and our intersectionality. Our study found this demand extends beyond, next slide please. This extends beyond platforms and beyond borders, and it's expected from content providers and brands alike. Because one thing about all that media engagement is just because we show up does not mean that we're sold. The quality and the nuance of how our communities and experiences are represented don't always have the right elements to succeed. And the savvy audience can discern when authenticity isn't there. This showed up in our study when we looked at different identity groups within the US Black population and how often they feel misrepresented both in content and ads. Next slide, please. The bottom line is audiences are ready for representation that goes beyond the basics. When we say content is key to the culture, we mean media that goes beyond the water cooler, the newsroom, and even the classroom. Our study found that 62% of Black audiences said they tune in to representative, inclusive programming because it helps them understand their own history and the struggles of their identity group, compared to only 43% of respondents overall. And again, looking at different segments of the community, over 67% of Black Americans wish they saw more representation when they engage with content. And again, one of the things that I mentioned in this report is we really did try to prioritize those different perspectives that have not come to the surface before. So again, you'll see the African American, the Black foreign born, and the Black first generation perspective represented. Next slide, please. The search to feel seen and heard is a driver behind embracing so many media options that extend beyond borders. And as Black audiences curate their global Black experience through their engagement, there's a few ways we detail this in the report, this import and export exchange of our culture through media. One is with the record year that Afrobeats had on the radio and online, topping many of the charts in the country over the last year. The other is we asked specifically about engagement of Black audiences with Black creators and influencers based outside of the country they live. So when we looked at the US Black population and asked about the demand for that influence, or those influencers or creators outside of the country, it's actually that connection that Black first generation Americans are looking for and driving through their social media. Next slide, please. One important note is it's really important for us to remember that connecting with this audience also brings other audiences along. We have a unique ability in our culture to influence the course of all culture, and the trends set here are in high demand for the entire Black community and beyond. And one of the stats that helps us really show that is we found that 51% of white Gen Zers also said it was important for them to follow a Black creator. More nuance and inclusivity isn't just for content. Black audiences want more relevancy from ads that we encounter as well. And we asked about the media channels where audiences wanted to engage with more relevant advertising. Both radio and podcasts were among the most relevant in the Black community across all 5 markets. Globally, podcasts were viewed as having the most relevant ads in each of the Black audience segments that we spoke to. And this underscored other Nielsen brand impact measurements showing host-read ads in particular perform better on brand recall, brand lift, and other important metrics. Next slide. And remember, we said at the beginning that this is not just about your DEI strategy. Representation is really critical to your growth strategy. So let's talk about what's at stake. 35% of Black Americans believe brands always portray us the same way. And 2 out of 3 Black Americans, they agreed that they'll cut ties with a brand they feel devalues their community. But that sentiment was even higher when we went around the world. So that $2 trillion in buying power that was just in the US just got bigger through the connection that media provides, and it also just got put at more risk when we don't consider all of the nuance that exists in our experience. Next slide, please. What all the pages in this report amount to is a reminder that we're more than just a demo, we are a diaspora. We are diverse, influential, and powerful. And audiences are telling us that they want reflected across the media they consume and the campaigns they encounter. The upside is winning with a global audience that drives culture and leads media engagement. And the call to action is to consider the nuance, intersectionality, and influence that exists across the Black audience today. Thank you. Thank you so much. Truly a labor of love. So we're so excited to be launching this here with you tonight. With that, I'm going to call up our panel, starting with our wonderful moderator, LaShawna Martin, who is our, yes, clap it up, please. Lashana is our Senior Vice President, Global Media Partnerships at Nielsen, with more than 10 years with the organization and an influential career across every stage of the business development process. Thank you so much for leading and moderating this conversation. I think we are just going to shift the podium out of the way. I'll move down here and call up our next panelist, who is Mr. Tony Coles. He's president of Multicultural Business and Development, president of the Black Information Network, the first and only 24/7 comprehensive national audio news service dedicated to providing an objective, accurate, and trusted source of continual news coverage with a Black voice and perspective. And Tony brings 35 years of experience in the radio industry. Thank you so much for being here, Tony. Next up, Julie Triolo, Senior Vice President of Research and Marketing at music video CTV service Vivo, where she is responsible for creating and implementing the strategic vision of the brand. And she brings experience from Warner Brothers, Yahoo, and many more. Julie was also awarded the New York Ad Club's, wink, wink, Presidential Award of 2015. And thank you so much for joining us, Julie. And as EVP of the Insights and Multi-Platform Analytics Group, Tyel Hayes from BET Media leads research, insights, and data across the brand's entire portfolio, and including linear, streaming, digital, and live events, all the things we just talked about Black audiences are consuming. Since joining the network in 2016, BET's research and insights team have been instrumental in the brand's transformation, and and awarded for their work. So welcome so much, and thank you for being here. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Karel Cooper, President of Advertising at Group Black, where he leads Group Black's revenue, operations, strategy, planning, and insights teams. Karel is an award-winning executive of more than 20 years of digital media experience and has been widely recognized for his leadership, his advocacy, and his innovation. Thank you, Karel. All right, who needs a mic?
Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. So excited to see the diversity in the room, and happy Black History Month. As Charlene mentioned, I'm Lashana, and I am here to learn. Look at the brain trust and the power that we have here. So although I have questions that I am going to ask, I have my own questions that we're going to ask. It's just having a conversation. And so what we want to do tonight, the goal is to add some real to the research. What Nielsen does well is we do a lot of, really great research and in-depth research, as Charlene went through. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk to these folks that live and breathe and actually make those results happen, and kind of find out how can we take advantage of these insights and actually do better to drive more representation and meet the demands and the needs of the viewers and consumers that we just talked about. So with that, I will kick it off with what I think is a real important foundational question. And this is to all of our panelists. And some people may consider it a little controversial, but so our first question, just so we can level set and understand what we're all talking about here, is doing business with Black consumers the same as DE&I? You hear the groans? You heard that? Did I tell you?
No, they're two separate things, and while they absolutely have an influence on one another, and DE&I is obviously a critical thing from my perspective and a lot of people's perspectives, I know that that's also become highly politicized right now, and we're seeing companies scale back DE&I initiatives. We're seeing them scale back DE&I quote unquote marketing budgets. To me, DE&I has always been about the systemic issues and about leveling the playing field. And it's absolutely important. What we all do is market to Black consumers. And that, as the chart showed, that's really about the numbers. It's about math. And we have to keep that conversation, in my opinion, to be a completely separate thing, because it is about growing business. And when you look at $2 trillion in spending power, when you look at the population growth, if you are a business person, you should be going where the consumers are. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, if you're doing the right thing there, you're also doing the right thing when it comes to DE&I. We know that isn't always the case, but the two can influence one another.
Yeah, they can influence one another, and I think your last point is where they are connected, because on the business side of things, you're right. Just look at the numbers, right? That we just had up on the screen. It makes complete business sense to want to engage with and build sustainable relationships with the Black global audience. And if you're not doing that over the next 5 years or so, I mean, you may be out of business in 10, 15 years. So it's that simple. But where the connection comes into play is that, as the data was showing, we're all very different. We're not the same. You can't speak to us the same way, right? And so you need people inside of your organization that also represent the culture and can advise on how to build those relationships.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think that that's a really important piece with the DEI structure, where it initially was created to change the systemic equitability within the construct of corporations. And I think when you have those diverse voices across the board, it improves decision-making, it increases innovation, you start to understand the landscape and the world around you in a more important way.
And I love analogies, so I'm gonna give you my first one today. I can't promise how many I'm gonna give, but my first one today is, I'm from Virginia. I'm very familiar with the difference between a turnip green, a mustard green, a collard green, and kale. Very familiar. You can flash a picture of one. I can tell you what it is, best way to cook it, how they taste. It's a part of my culture. I don't know the difference between a crocodile and an alligator. I don't. So the assumption, the point of the analogy is, without presence, the assumption that I am now supposed to come in and educate people probably in Florida or Louisiana on how to best market to a crocodile versus alligator, I'm gonna get it wrong 50% of the time, right? I'm gonna just get it wrong because it's not something that I know well. So without presence of the culture that you're trying to target, you're gonna always just get it wrong because it's not a part of who you are. The second part of why I feel like it's connected, in my opinion, is positionality. Because if Black people are relegated to the assistant roles, to the mailroom roles, to the support roles, not in leadership, management, strategy roles, then that positionality will never allow us to really make the decision. So when we're cutting budgets, we're saying, well, what are we gonna cut? BET Awards or NASCAR? We're gonna always choose BET Awards if there's no one in the room who really understands what BET Awards, what Essence is, but everybody knows what NASCAR is, because we are indoctrinated in the NASCAR culture. So back to that, support the collard greens and the turnip greens and the kale, because you need people who are from these places who understand that to actually be able to actually market to those things in a meaningful way.
I think I need a new sweatshirt, support the collard greens. I love it. So my key takeaway, so all great responses, my key takeaway here is that DE&I and reaching Black consumers is not the same thing, but they're correlated, they're connected. Okay, so the next question is for Tony and Tayo. So taking into consideration, the evolution of Black America, the globalization of it, as we just saw in the data, and as part of your jobs, a big part of that is connecting, Black consumers with advertisers and agencies. So now understanding or it's become more apparent that the globalization is not just a trend, it's gonna be what it is. How are you now defining a Black audience target for your advertisers and brands?
So similar to the analogy that you gave, but I can't do that one justice. iHeartMedia, we have so many different products in so many different markets that someone who is listening to the Club Shay Shay podcast is different than someone who may be listening to Steve Harvey or a 50-year-old Black farmer in Birmingham listening to the Black Information Network. So for us, it really depends on the product, the platform, and the audience for that particular product. And so, again, you're going to hear this again and again and again. We're not a monolith. And so for me, it's really hard to describe the Black consumer because it varies across our company.
Yeah, for us, and my second analogy of the day. No, but seriously, one of my favorite shows is The Golden Girls, and I love any Golden Girls fans in the audience. Thank you. It is, I use that analogy and I talk about we are so comfortable understanding the difference between Sophia, Blanche, Dorothy, and Rose. We understand them, we understand their culture. We don't lump them into one group. We know how to distinctly target. So if I were to go buy a gift for the four of them, I can buy a gift for those four people because I have learned that they are uniquely different. They live in the same house, they share lives together, but we don't offer that same privilege to Black people. We are often very much looped. So Keisha, who is 29 in Harlem, is very different than Keisha, 49 in Houston. They're all in our 18 to 49 demo, but these two women live extremely different lives. So for us at BET, it's about we taking the approach of looking at need states. So we're very thoughtful because for us, needs are the most salient. Those are things that don't change that often. So how do we really figure out what the need states are and then use some advanced segmentation to be really thoughtful about how do we think about the clear targets in those clear segments. So we have our own versions of Blanche, Dorothy, Sophia, and Rose in our segmentation that we can then say, if I'm dropping All the Queen's Men, is going after one target. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty saucy. Versus if I'm looking at Sisters, a very different target, right? And we're very thoughtful about how we go to market with that. And then by pulling that through our systems, working with our partners on the front end and back end. So whether it be customers and we say advertisers, hey, who's your hair care brand target? Is she a Sophia? Is she a Rose? And by having our data, we can engage with our partners in a much different conversation about what's needed and then tie that through in a way that really makes sense.
So that actually, as you're saying that, I mean, we talk about segmentation all the time, but when you think about it as it applied to the Black audience, it's probably more critical than any other group. Yeah. And carrying that conversation into your advertisers and agencies, are you seeing that they're understanding this and they're actually changing how they're connecting with Black consumers? Are they keeping pace?
Who's going?
This is for everybody.
I mean, I think that that's part of the hesitation, right, is to get that message right. And so, like you said, there's so much nuance. And so you kind of have to look at the core values of the different audiences you're speaking to or their belief systems is more relevant than the demographics. And I feel like demographics should kind of be thrown out the window because that doesn't really connect you to those audiences in meaningful ways. And I think the other piece, and thank goodness for Nielsen helping us bridge that gap, is the data measurement piece. It's really hard to see the success of your campaign in real time. And so the hesitation is that some of the resources may be lost. And so really getting down to that measurement piece is also going to be important so that we can understand the nuance and how people are becoming relevant to those brand messages.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think some are doing better than others at this, right? I think the other piece too that we have to remember, one of the things that we here at Group Black, where we get some pushback sometimes as well, why should I work through you all to reach Black audience when I can reach them anywhere, right? And if you look at the data, all right, that was just up on the screen, Black consumers over-index for consideration and purchasing and engaging when they're receiving content from a Black-owned media company or from someone that looks like them. And so by working with us, right, you can reach that consumer when they're highly engaged, and that will help drive your numbers.
100%. Okay, so anyone else want to chime in on any pushback? And the reason why I ask this question is because I've seen it as a challenge.
Sure. I started my career off at P&G, and in 2004, we flew most of North America to Los Angeles to have a conversation about targeting the Black audience in 2004. It was 20 years ago. And we had a lot of these same numbers just decreased down a little bit. It was, 970, it's gonna be $1 trillion in these years. And so I sit here looking back on this now literally 20 years later saying, wow, we have been talking about if you don't, there's going to be a point where there are more children of color than are not, and Pampers, you got to be really thoughtful about how we look at packaging. And so we've been in this for a while. So the pushback has been ever present, in many ways omnipresent. So as we think through this, I do feel, yes, there are still pushback. Because at the end of the day, they're still biased that we have to push through, right? And let's not forget that other word. That's why we're in many of these challenges. So for me, the pushback. Yeah, sorry, it was a couple other words too, right? But the being real thoughtful about the challenge that we are getting is, well, I was told. I'm gonna use an example here. I'm just gonna play it out. We are told, well, the person that pulled my data, who is X age and X cultural background, told me that I can reach you. I'm like, what'd she say about me? What, she told you something about me? Hold on, say it again. She told you where to meet me. Oh, okay. You didn't ask me. You asked her about me. Okay, cool. Now, so we have to start there often. And then we're now fighting against what she said about me versus what I'm trying to tell you about me, right? And that's what the pushback is we spend, now the meeting's over, we gotta go, next clients, I'm coming in, and we're kind of stuck in these spaces. So I think that there is definitely pushback that we are obviously seeing, and it's masked through words like efficiency and total market. It gets layered. It's like those are whispers to us around, I don't really want to do the work. Yeah. It's easier for me to just, it's so much easier for total market, so much easier for everybody, right? But it's so less effective, which is what we all know. So yes.
Absolutely. And speaking of effectiveness, because I think that's why the hurdle remains and the pushback remains, because the knowledge behind the effectiveness hasn't been made clear. So this question is for Julie, because Vivo has a spotlight in the study. And so speaking of effectiveness, I would love to understand and tell the audience here how you're using Nielsen data to actually demonstrate the effectiveness of reaching Black audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just in general, we have a consumer at the center sort of strategy where we really want to look at how do we build more reach and resonance with audiences that matter to us. Black artists are endemic to our music video platform and have grown the platform. And so it's a really important demographic for us, but we don't want to talk about demographics. So what we wanted to do was really look at, and in partnership with Nielsen, we created this study with their NMI tool to really look at what our reach and resonance looks like on the platform. And we found that 54% of Black Americans, 18 to 34 are on the platform, which is 8.8 million of Black adults that the other 13 competitors in the study do not reach. In addition to that, 27%, they're spending 27% of their time, which is more than just the regular adult population. And so we're really seeing that there is resonance on our platform, there is that reach, and how do we cultivate that and actually build those opportunities for brands to connect with those fans in really relevant ways as well.
Can I add a point on the effectiveness? I think one of the things I would love to see this year is, if you go back to 2020, you had a ton of brands come out with headlines about spending money with Black-owned media, investing in Black-owned media. I would love to see those brands who have had success, because I'm sure all of us can talk about successes that we've had with brands. I would love to see those brands now stand up and talk publicly the same headlines that they put out in 2020, talk about the success that they're having working with Black-owned media and reaching Black audiences. That's where the effectiveness is.
Okay, now it's heating up. So let's stay there for a minute.
Sure.
Let's stay there for a minute. So, because the study shows how important it is for businesses to do business with Black-owned companies or Black-owned businesses, and that now has expanded to content creators. Mm-hmm. And so and this should be a core strategy in order for companies to actually resonate with consumers. But what is the barrier? Why are they not able to kind of carry that through? And what is Group Black doing to bridge that gap?
Yeah, sure. So I think it was about a year ago around this time where we began working with Nielsen on putting out a first of its kind Black Creator Report. And essentially what we did is we saw all the headlines that were out there about Black creators not having access to the same opportunities as their non-Black counterparts. And so we set out with Nielsen to disprove that myth, right? And the results that we put out showed that Black creators in a lot of categories esports, lifestyle, entertainment, and others either generate just as much media value, if not more media value, than their non-Black counterparts. And so for us, it was important to lead with that data, to put it out in the marketplace to say, marketers, again, you are missing an opportunity to grow your business. And so from our perspective, it's important that when we're out and we're speaking with agencies and brands about their goals for the year, especially as it comes to social media, that we can connect them with the right influencers to help them amplify their brand. And we've had a lot of success of brands working with us that have over-indexed on awareness, consideration, by us engaging with those creators and engaging with those brands and producing a lot of content for them.
Very nice. Now, how do we close that pay gap between the creators? It's in the report, but that's a Lashana question.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's one thing you can do to close that pay gap. I think it's a few things. One, we have to keep putting out the data points. We have to keep educating the marketplace. We have to be consultants to brands and marketers. And then again, I think those brands that are having success have to speak out publicly about it, just like they did a couple years ago. And I think by doing all of those things, then you start to move the needle.
That's good stuff. So let's stay on the track about content creators. So content creators, to a large extent, have helped facilitate the globalization of Black America. But in addition to that, they also facilitate kind of cultural excitement amongst non-Black audiences. So basically, the Black reach is just not to the Black people, is the point. And so how are you guys, this is a question for everybody, how are you guys seeing that dynamic show up in the work that you do? So as you're producing Black material, Black content to reach Black audiences, but it's going beyond that, how are you seeing that show up?
Yeah, for us, it's an amazing symbiotic relationship that we're seeing, right? It's our scripted series and our unscripted formats that we create here are then exported out and perform really well for us in the other markets that we have BET. We are also bringing it back in. So one of our biggest, again, back to the question, she telling you on where we at. I'm gonna tell you on where we are. At the end of June, we're at the BET Awards, right? So at BET Awards, what we've done is we have put on the main stage our biggest international award. And we created that moment very intentionally because it was like, we have a lot of categories, we give a lot of awards out, but only so many can go on stage. We thought it was really, really important to make that highlight, to kind of show in and help, again, do what BET does, use that stage to catapult people's careers. So then you get on the stage and now the world's like, wait, who is that? Oh, you're the person who sings the song that I was hearing on the radio. And so we've been very intentional and thoughtful about using our big tempo moments to really celebrate the diaspora. So whether it's bringing an international act to the U.S. and building that award there, or having a queer hip hop artist perform in the hip hop award ciphers, like we are very thoughtful of like, how do we keep pushing the intersection button so that we can really rise up and help us all kind of see each other much more fully.
Any other thoughts?
I mean, when it comes to music videos, it's sort of part of our DNA. The representation and the diverse voices is there. And when you look at the top charts, inclusive audiences is a light that's shined on it. The top 10 are either LGBTQ, Black audiences, Latin artists. And so when you look back at some of the heritage of the bedrock of Black Americans and how music was created through jazz, pop, hip hop, and how much that has influenced, what we love today in the music video world, as well as how much it's influenced other categories. This is an incredibly important audience. I always love, the Jay-Z line of like, I made the Yankee hat more famous than a Yankee can. So, yeah, it's very true.
And I think we know for a fact, Black people have always influenced culture. We have always done that. But what we're seeing a lot of, especially in households below the age of 50, the majority of those are now multicultural households. You have a lot of Black people marrying other races. You have a lot of just natural influences happening. And we're seeing that so many of the influences that we have had have just now become part of the mainstream.
And that should improve the effectiveness, right? If we're able to demonstrate that reach, then that should actually help drive that. I'm getting the 5-minute countdown, and I still have so many questions, because when I think about the globalization of Black America, I'm like, ooh, that's a burden for BET to kind of keep up with it and to just make sure that that representation is constantly there. But now the burden is growing and sharing. So I am going to probably move to our final question, which hopefully should help everybody in this room. And so I'm going to ask all the panelists to wave their magic wand and tell me what change, when it comes to engaging Black audiences, would you do?
Can I give you two?
Please.
First one, and this is more specific to media, change the legacy buying practices, specifically around things like brand safety.
Great.
I think we should get rid of keyword blocking in the industry completely.
Yeah.
There are tons of examples and better ways of doing it. The most recent example is, if you didn't know who Killer Mike was before last week, you now know who he is, right? But how many brands are blocking the term kill or killer, right? So all content about him probably gets blocked, right? That's one example. The other thing that I would change is, if you think about from a VC perspective, less than 1% of funding goes to Black entrepreneurs from a VC perspective. And while we spend a lot of time talking about DEI and fixing problems of companies that exist today, I think if we funded more Black entrepreneurs, then those problems would get fixed from the very beginning, because we know diverse entrepreneurs are going to hire diverse teams, right? And if you hire diverse teams, it goes back to my point earlier about diverse staffs can help you reach diverse and Black audiences. Mm-hmm. And Group Black is a great example of that.
Go Group Black.
I'm just going to dovetail off of that. Have Black people in every room.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times, I call it the phone a friend. A decision is made, let's run it by somebody Black. If we were in the room to begin with, those decisions wouldn't be made, or would be made differently. So we have to have representation at every stage.
Yeah, and I'll dovetail off of that. It goes back to the DE&I constructs. We actually need that framework in our institutions, so that there are those voices there that are helping with the nuance, that are helping make sure we get it right when we're creating the creative. And so if I had a magic wand, it would be perfect creative for every belief system, and having those nuances so that you really are connecting the brands with the fans in really effective ways.
All right. So I'll just end with that same kind of thought that one of my wonderful friends from politics told me: strategy always reflects those at the table. And so that's period. So you can't make a strategy, again, about crocodiles if you've never met one. So therefore, you only birth from what you know. So I think really to be thoughtful about our pipeline, how do we be committed to Black impact and be committed to the impact that comes when we think about the entire funnel, and really helping to push the entire funnel from production all the way down into base marketing.
Yeah. See, I'm absorbing all of this, and what's coming to mind for me is like your corporate cultural shortcomings is not worth the risk to the business. And so that is where that needs to be fixed. So everything that you guys are saying, I agree, and is spot on. And I could definitely keep going. Charlene, how much time we got?
We're at time for questions, a couple, if you want to take them.
I would love to take those questions. Of course, because as you guys could tell, we could keep going. There's a lot to kind of cover and talk about. So we'll go ahead and take the first question. I think, do we have a mic that we want to pass around?
Hi, so my name is Anthony Tharp. I'm at TBWA here in New York as a strategist. And thank you all for attending, well, all of you hosting this and you guys attending. This has been so illuminating. I work with a client that majority of the audience is Black. And this has opened my eyes, and I'm like, okay, so how can I apply this to my client to kind of raise the awareness of this diaspora that is happening? I knew it was happening, I just didn't know it was at this pace. So I'm going to get a little granular. So it's one thing that my client understands the importance of the Black audience. But when it comes to the agency part, we can reach them, but it's about connecting to them. And by connecting to them, I mean the actual creative executions, messaging, all those things. And you stress the importance of having people in the room, because we need those people in the room to create that creative that actually connects with them. So I'm kind of in an issue where I'm talking to the clients and, I'm creating these great strategy presentations. No, I was kidding. But, but I have to, but I'm trying to stress the importance of hiring talent that can create the creative to resonate with this audience and the different audiences within that. So would love to just get some perspective of like, what can I do? I know it's a crazy $6 million question, but I would love to get your expertise on that.
We have $6 million brains here, so let's
I'll start. I'll make it really brief. I think one avenue is testing, because if you can do some A/B, that could help them see where some faults are. Now, but you have to have someone to create the A and B for you. Any of us here, and probably most people in this room, know a lot of emerging agencies and content creators who can help build. And I think we have to disrupt that agency model that says that like big agencies are the only ones that have the right to tell. Again, she can't tell me where I am. Like, she can't do that. And so in that case, you need to bring me in the room. And so we can all connect. And I think having an A/B in that scenario can then help you have data to say, oh, wow, this one is 10 points better than this, and connecting. It starts to open the door. It's gonna be a journey, but right now, if it's without data, it just becomes everyone's opinions, and if you're outnumbered, then you'll be outvoted. So,
yeah, and if I can just add on to the data piece, right? Now more than ever, especially the Black global audience, we want to spend our money with brands who not only share the same values and beliefs as we do, but we can see ourselves in that brand. And so for you, if I were in your shoes, I would approach it from the standpoint of it's not just about reaching the Black audience, it's about building a sustainable relationship with the Black audience. And you do that by making sure they can see themselves in your brand.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. Excuse me.
My church folks know what that is.
Hi, my name is Hussein with the BBC, probably the least Black organization in the room today. But the presentation, great insights, great conversations. I'm curious, just in terms of preaching to the choir, so everyone here is probably full agreement with you. But when you look at this from the perspective of a marketer that's looking at Latino audiences or looking at API audiences and the growth of those audiences, does it become a relativity discussion where like those audiences are, or even those populations are growing faster than the African-American population? So then even though there's all this great growth, maybe it gets deprioritized when you start looking relative group to group.
I think you mentioned something earlier. It's about the intersectionality of those audiences, right? Because there is certainly a trend about multiracial households, multicultural households as well too, right? And so I think there's a conversation to be had about approaching it from that intersectionality.
And absolutely, I would agree with that. But also, I experience that because I work across our multicultural business, and I get we're really focused on Hispanic, we're really focused on Latinos, and that is a louder and louder voice. But I always bring it back to the math. These are the groups that are growing, and you cannot ignore any one group, and you can't argue with the data.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, shifting the construct of what we have historically known as multicultural audiences. We've talked about it as inclusive solutions or inclusive marketing because it's no longer really like segmented as multicultural, but it's these inclusive audiences that we want to embrace, that we represent endemically on our platform, and how do you reach them in really relevant ways.
Fabulous. I'm going to take this last question.
Hey, I'm Mikey Tableman. I live in D.C. I am a first-generation Nigerian that was born in Jacksonville, Florida, so I can tell you the nuances between an alligator and a crocodile. Yeah, so we can talk after this. You got it. Right. So my question is, how can we make sure that this data is not weaponized against us? So we are a subcontractor for a Hispanic agency and a white-owned agency, and we spend a lot of times arguing about this is how black people live, and they'll point to data like this and say, oh, well, that's not what Nielsen said. And so how can we make sure that they are going by lived experiences as well in conjunction with this data to make sure they're making the right decisions where we're not in the room?
So I think one thing, and this is not going to change overnight, but more and more companies have to make sure that the people who are working with data and analytics are also hiring storytellers. Because when information gets weaponized, it's because they see a PowerPoint slide with a set of numbers. But when you have people in the room who can translate those numbers into a deeper story, that is the beginning of that. It's not overnight, but that's the beginning.
And also use that word, right? And take your word lived and make that an action word, right? And so I'll even say it for us. We live in New York. Most people at BET are black. We live in New York, but so therefore we are in a very specific cultural context. I needed them to go meet Keisha in Houston. So we hopped on a plane and we went to see Keisha in Houston. And people say, oh, and this is a true story. People at BET say, oh, people come home from work and watch TV. Yes, they do. Down south, you come home, you turn on your 90-inch that is in your house, and you start cooking, right? Here, we are still at work. We are still, all of us, and none of us are home yet, right? And it's those little things of like making that data point alive for them. They say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that this was happening. And you're like, yes, and so I'll share one last quick one. We saw a few years ago that some of our highest ratings were at late night around Martin. So some of our highest ratings of the day will be Martin and late night. And people were like, my goodness, I'm really trying to understand. And so we're like, hey, let's go on the road. Went to Philly, and I will never forget this young lady. She's a CNA. She was like, I work from 3 to 11. I walk in the door at 11:30. I take that uniform off, I sit on that sofa, and I turn on Martin because I work with patients all day. I need something to turn my brain off. So then that's a story now that my scheduling head would have never gotten. And now it's like, oh, that's why everyone's coming to Martin in late night, because I need to turn my brain off, and we can be a source for that. And it then gives some purpose behind your work.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Wow, round of applause. Oh, we've got to wrap it. I'm so sorry. We'll have some time after the panel to like mix and mingle, but Lashana, I want to thank you again for saying yes to my random request to moderate to each of my panelists. I mean, just wow, the expertise. I want to thank you all again for that rousing conversation. We'll have a little bit more time afterward to meet and greet. I want to turn it to our Chief Revenue Officer at Nielsen to give us some closing remarks. Amilcar Perez.
Much, Arlene. Hi, everybody. Hello. First of all, thank you, the panelists. Thank you, Lasana, for coordinating this. She's in my team. It's great. So, as you guys know, I'm running as Shannon said, the commercial organization at Nielsen. I run commercial and marketing right now. And what I'm more proud of Nielsen is that we have been measuring diverse audience and communities not yesterday, for many, many years. And this is not what we are doing because it's a trend now. Because this has been led by Stacey de Armas for a long time. So she's one of the key key pillars in our company to keep driving this initiative. And this is always, I have to clarify that it's not from yesterday and it's not trended. Because we believe, and that's how we have been doing it. I also want to thank Charlene for, I imagine she did an amazing presentation because I arrived late. And I will recommend access to the full report. I'm very excited about our report. It's the Global Black Audience. We are celebrating the beginning of the Black History Month, that we shouldn't be 1 month. Always I believe on that. I am Hispanic. I don't believe the Hispanic Heritage Month is, I don't believe in the 1 month, but okay, they like to have a 1 month for everything. So we will celebrate it now, but we should be celebrating every day. So go and access, give us feedback, what we can be better, what we can help. I heard the questions as well, how we can help you transact better with audiences. We are here to help you all the time. We work with agencies, we work with advertisers, we work with the sales side, with everybody. So here we are. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, the Ad Club, for hosting us as well. And we would like to keep doing this. We would like, I know we are streaming as well. Hopefully next time, we don't have this group of people, we have 5, 6 times, 8 times, because that way will show that really, we really is, the question you guys are talking is how we are engaging with the communities in a good way. And it's not just that Black people should be in these type of events. Everybody should be coming and listening to the events. That's when we will make the difference. So no more talking because everybody may be tired. Thank you so much. Enjoy. I think there's some food over there and let's mingle all together. Thanks again.